happening, everybody? So we are going to complete the collar right now. So we have a one-piece collar which consists of 2 pieces of fabric, and the under collar, the top collar, and the under collar we have fused, and the top collar we have not fused. Yeah. So we lay right sides together, lining up the collar edge to edge, and then we're going to be sewing all along this point. Or just before we sew, after we've lined them up, we will iron the bottom part of the collar up. This is the top side, and that's the bottom side. So the bottom side we fold up 1 centimeter like that, and then we iron it flat from this point all the way to that point. Yeah, iron it flat, and then you can stick a pin in there, just so that you can keep that 1 centimeter down. We grab a pin. Line up the collar again. It tends to move a lot. And then we're going to sew all around this point, across, and then down again, and then we're going to stop there. Yeah. So pinning the collar. Turn the collar around, and then we pin the other side. There we go. And now we are ready to sew. I'm going to zoom in for you guys so you can see a little bit better. There we go. And remember guys, so our seam allowance is 1 centimeter. Lower our needle into the fabric. We can do back tack. 1 to 3, 1 to 3, and then we're going to continue the stitch. And whenever I'm getting to get to a point, guys, I use my knee lifter. I lift the fabric up so I can pivot the fabric like that. You see, the foot is lifting up. And then I can pivot the fabric without losing the stitch line here. Get to the point over there, lift your foot up with your knee lifter, or at least with your lever at the back of the machine, pivot the fabric, and then start sewing. Making sure that your fabric does line up. Right to the point there, we're going to use our lever, lift up the foot so we can pivot the fabric again. Go to the point, lift up. Get to the point there, back tack again, 1 to 3, 1 to 3. And there we go. Let me zoom out real quick. So now that we've attached the collars together, we will now start nipping and trimming and getting the collar ready to sew it on the neckline. Guys, so after we have sewn the collar from one point all the way to the other side, we will take our scissor and then we will start trimming off some of the edges. And as you guys know, whenever we get to a curved line or a point, we have to nip in. So we nip in close to the stitch line as possible. So nipping in and not cutting through the stitch line. And here, because it's a curved line, we will do a few nips over there. And then when we get to the point, this point over here, we will just cut it in a 45-degree angle, not past the stitch line here. Then we will move on to the next point, cut that point as well. We're not cutting off the stitch line, guys. The stitch line is still there. And then we nip into this point here, into the corner, and then around the curved line, and then we trim some of the edges. Once that's done, we will take the collar, stick our hand inside, and box the collar inside out, exactly like we did with the cuff, remember, in the previous video. We poke the collar out. Then grab a scissor or something just to poke out the collar, not too hard because you want to not stick through the fabric or through the stitch line. Just a little bit, poke, 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 so we can get the nice even point over there. And then we will continue doing that to flatten the collar, getting out all the creases like that. There's our shape. We will just use the iron afterwards and just iron down the collar to flatten them and get him ready to sew into the neckline. So that's going to be the next step, guys. We're going to take the collar now and sew it onto our shirts. So after we have prepared the collar, we have ironed them flat, and now we are ready to start sewing this onto the neckline. And we did fold in one part over here. So one part is folded in already, 1 centimeter, and the other raw part, that's the part we're going to be sewing first, yeah? So that part I would like you guys to grab like that, and we're going to place this raw edge onto the neckline from the inside. So here's my shirt. This is the outside of the shirt, and I would like to sew this this collar from the inside of the shirt, yeah? On this side to that side, yeah? So taking the raw edge and grabbing the shirt from the neckline, but from the center front. We're going to sew from center front all the way to the other center front, yeah? So I'm placing my collar like that. Try and bring it closer for you guys. So here is my button stand, the edge of my button stand, the fold line. And I'm taking the collar and I'm placing it edge to edge, the raw edges, yeah? And then I'm going to put a pin over there just to keep them together. Grabbing a pin, sticking the pin in there, and then I'm going to start pinning the whole neckline, or at least put enough pins in there for you as an assist so that you can sew the collar to the neckline, yeah? Making sure that you're not overlapping any edges, pinning the collar as you go. Alright, so we will pin onto the other side of the button stand here. So here we are at the other side of the button stand, and then we are ready to start sewing this collar. Boom, there we go. So the collar is pinned to the neckline, and now I'll be sewing from the inside first, and then we'll flip it over to the other side, yeah? So let's go to the sewing machine real quick. Alright, so after we have pinned the collar to the neckline, we are now ready to sew. So we know that our seam allowance is 1 centimeter, and we are going to place it under our foot. So here we go, lifting up our foot off the machine, making sure that it's sewed edge to edge, people. Alright, so we are ready to sew 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Making sure that it is edge to edge, and you can remove the pins as you go. Take your time with this process, guys, because sometimes the yoke tends to get bulky under the fabric, or under the collar. And try and straighten them out as you go. Let me zoom in a little bit for you guys, a little bit more. And we will continue the stitch all the way to the other side of the center front. Back tap, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And there we go, people. And now we are ready to flip the collar up so that we can iron them flat and then do the last stitch, which will be on the outside of the collar and the neckline. Alright, so after we've sewn the first step of the collar onto the neckline, we now have the second step, which is now just tucking in that 1 centimeter that we've already ironed flat before we even started sewing the collar, right? So that is already prepared for us, prepared, yeah? We're gonna tuck it away, and now we have that stitch line as a guideline. So the fold line of the collar needs to overlap that line by 1 millimeter, yeah? So we're gonna try our best to overlap it by 1 millimeter, and then we're gonna grab a pin. And then we're going to start pinning the collar to the neckline here. This is now the final step before we, finish off the collar. And then we will iron the collar flat again. So overlap by 1 millimeter, hold them down, and then slap a pin in there real quick so that the pin can hold them down till we get to the sewing bits, yeah? So we're going to do that step from this side of the collar all the way to the other side of the collar, yeah? All the way to the side. So we're going to cut that off, or even tuck it away. All the raw edges or the raw pieces of fabric sticking out, we will just tuck it away inside of the collar, overlapping the stitch line by 1 millimeter and slapping a pin in there. And then when we're ready and we've pinned everything, we will now start sewing from this side of the collar, from the outside. This is the outside, that's the inside, yeah? So we will sew on the outside of this fold line of the fabric. We will sew an edge stitch, and all of you guys already know what an edge stitch is, right? Edge stitch from this point all the way down to the other side of the collar. And with that stitch we will be able to catch this fold line on the inside of the collar, right? So we will do that right now in the next video.